All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and introduce our hosts. So first, I want all the panelists to get ready to introduce themselves. My name is Brenda Toohey. I am Director of TK-12 STEM in Oakland. And I'm going to hand it off to my friend Kelleth. Kelleth, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Great having you here. I'm Kelleth Chin, and I'm the Coordinator of Instructional Technology at OUSD.
All right, and Kelleth, you want to tag someone else to introduce themselves?
Yes, Samantha Solomon, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Sam Solomon. I'm a teacher librarian at the Calvin Simmons campus. So that's Life Academy and United for Success Academy, middle and high school. And I'll pass it to Lizzie.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Humphreys. I'm the secondary history specialist, and I'm going to try and keep up with your questions in the chat or the Q&A today.
And Sunny?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sunny Kim, and I coordinate social emotional learning for our district. It's good to see everyone.
And a cat. And Chaz.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chaz Garcia. I'm the second vice president of the Oakland Education Association and also a peer coach and been teaching here at elementary for 25 years.
All right. So I'm gonna share a quick quote. This is one that I came across last week that I found inspirational from our friend Marie Curie. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. As you look at this quote, you might be thinking about Marie Curie. You might also be thinking about trying to understand distance learning. I think all of those are appropriate. The more we work together to understand, the more we can do. So we're here this morning to talk about distance learning. We're going to have a message from OEA. We're going to hear a little bit about self-care and connection. You're going to hear about some digital platforms that you can use to get started, and we're going to go over some resources. We're learning this together, so at the end of this, we're going to ask for your feedback. We hope that you see this as the beginning and not as sort of a culmination. There's a lot that we can share, but there's also a lot of answers we don't have right now. I want to share our definition of distance learning, and this is from the OEA MOU. So what we're talking about is instruction in which the teacher and the student are in different locations. This could be online instruction. This could also be take-home materials like book bags or packets. This also includes phone calls and emails and text reminders and other forms of communication. So as we think about distance learning, we want to hold that broad view. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chaz to give us an update on the MOU.
Hi, everyone. So yes, thank you, Brenda, for sharing that definition. I know we're all in a time of uncertainty, and I'm really happy that a great team of educators came together to bargain with the district and reach a tentative agreement on an MOU yesterday, which will kind of give some foundational understanding of the work that we have ahead, because we know that we didn't just transition and take school home. This looks very different for all of us. And you should have received an email in your non-OUSD email with a link to the MOU so that you can read it through. And a memorandum of understanding simply means that we have an agreement, and it is discussing parts that are not included in our regular contract. So it would take the place. For example, our work day will not be for elementary 6 hours and 45 minutes because that doesn't make sense in this context. So you'll find more information there. And you all will have the opportunity to vote to ratify the MOU and to agreement. So right now it's just a tentative agreement, but we're asking members to weigh in. But I encourage you to take a look there and just really think about this experience. While it's a difficult one, we were all forced into as an opportunity for us to connect differently. I've never had 303 people in my living room, so welcome. But although we can't be together physically, we can connect in a different way to support one another. And I know as an educator, our first inclination is just to go into overdrive thinking about what about our students. And so I want to encourage you all. I've been so proud of all of the work everyone has been doing on this team and beyond throughout the district. But I really want to encourage you to do two things. One, take advantage of the resources that are out there. There are some on OUSD. I know Kelsey will share more about that later. OEA also has some resources available for those of you who are concerned with community support and how to kind of connect families. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is to allow yourself time and space throughout the day to just take time for you. Don't do what we normally do at school, which is go, 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 forget to eat, don't use the restroom. Like, those are just very bare minimum things that we need to put into our schedule, but really thinking about planning time for yourself to do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. Read a book, meditate. I had to learn that last year around this time. But yeah, so just, I'm gonna let Sunny go ahead and expound a little more on that. But I just wanted to say from OEA that we're really here for you and looking forward to supporting one another through this journey, and that these things that are being presented are supports, not demands. Thank you.
Thanks, Jazz. Yeah, you know, the word that that I've been hearing most often used, and it's a word that I hadn't heard in quite a while, was uncharted. That we are kind of entering this uncharted territory, and that what I just wanted to share in a few minutes is something that I was listening to a webinar that I will share a link to that I found pretty powerful. And one of the things they said that this presenter was saying is that because we're in this uncharted territory, many of the strategies that we have used in the past to help regulate our emotions, to kind of navigate through this time, aren't working, or maybe not working as well. And so we're feeling a lot of this being out of balance. And part of the task in front of it now is, so what are some new strategies, or maybe some old ones we didn't use that often, that we need to kind of try it out. So for example, I am really going to try to practice mindful breathing. I even downloaded an app called Balance that I think you can use it for free for 1 year. But it's all about this idea that in this current context, self-care is so critical. And I would encourage everyone to think about self-care as part of built into your own professional practice. As Chaz said, take the time, you know, you've had a 1 hour after this webinar, take a break. I've heard from everyone that virtual meetings are much more demanding than the face-to-face encounters that we have. And then I think it's really important, as and Chaz referenced this earlier, about the sense of being connected, that we are neurologically hardwired to socially connect. And just as part of this being out of balance, the challenge now is, well, how do we connect virtually? How do we maintain positive relationships with our friends, our family, with our students, their families? And I will say that there are some really creative ways that you are coming up with. And also that I will just share one example in my family. There's a group of us, 4 families that have known each other for some 20 years. We are now holding once a week cocktail hour where we just check in. And as much as possible, we try not to talk about the pandemic. But that's just one, suggestion. And the SEL team will be putting together a list of resources that touch upon wellness. as well as how does SEL fit in within distance learning?
Okay, thanks so much, Sunny. Great hearing from you, and great hearing from you, Chaz, as well. Just really appreciate that. One thing I think it's really important to remember before we even start talking about setting up distance learning or online learning or lessons or whatnot is that we're in the midst of a crisis. This is a huge crisis that's traumatic for people in our family. It's a trauma event. There are people that are losing their jobs. It's scary for everybody, especially kids, the idea that people are dying or sick. People are losing their jobs. There are a lot of people that are losing their jobs in our households that maybe there's one parent or both parents that have lost their jobs. And so it's really important to put self-care and connection at the forefront of anything that we're doing. So please do make sure that you're thinking about your own self-care first. Make sure you're taking care of yourself before you even start to getting to work or thinking about any of this stuff, okay? And that's something that all of us need to remember. So I just want to talk a little bit. I'm going to share my screen, and I want to talk a little bit about just some considerations for when you are setting up distance learning. One thing to really think about and keep at the forefront is prioritizing connection. Remember that students, they're not only losing their physical classrooms, they're not losing like the context that they're used to as far as learning, but they've lost you as a person. You're an important person to them, and they've lost just that physical connection or that in-person connection with their classmates. So that's really something that we want to prioritize when we're thinking about any of this, about distance learning. So try to check in with each student at least once a week if you can. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you have to make a phone call to everybody, but a phone call could be good. Some kind of like a video conferencing, or even just a message. If you've got a way to send a message, receive a message, your students and the families will really appreciate hearing from you. With that in mind, check out some platforms. Use Talking Points if you are ready to use Talking Points. Talking Points is a text message-based platform. A lot of you are already using it. A lot of schools are already set up, but we've now expanded access to every classroom teacher. So if you have not checked that out, please check that out. That also allows for translation from English to the student's home language, and then conversely, it will translate messages back from the home language to English for you. So that's a really good way, and you can also send links or photos, whatever you want to send. So please consider using that or checking that out. And Flipgrid is also, we're going to be talking more about that tomorrow in a training tomorrow, but it's also a fantastic platform for just sending quick video messages that are just very short, but it allows students, anyone in your class, to respond to each other. So that's a really good, I've just been checking that out recently, and I'm really enjoying that. And I was meeting with Sam yesterday, and she was saying like Flipgrid is something, it's just like, it's really perfect for right now in our situation. So consider using that, and check out that webinar that we'll be doing tomorrow for both Talking Points and Flipgrid. Remember flexibility. This is really important because when we're talking about flexibility, just think about just the idea that that you're not always able to do something like right now. Maybe a lot of you're caring for kids. I've got 4 kids, and so there's like lots of stuff going on at home, and there's going to be a lot that's happening in students' lives that are different. And so trying to say, okay, we're all going to meet at a certain time at 9:30 and get onto a Zoom call, that's just not going to work for everybody, and that's going to cut off some students that aren't able to do that, or maybe they don't have internet access right now. Maybe it's just not going to work for them. Maybe they don't have the support at home to be able to do that. So please remember to account for different capacities to connect in different schedules. And so one thing that we like to talk about is emphasizing asynchronous instruction. So that means that you're not saying, okay, everybody needs to meet at a certain time, but you're allowing opportunities to do classwork or to participate in a way where students, they can be on their own schedule and they can work with family schedules as well. Okay, so those are just some important points to just keep in mind. So talking about just like how you get set up, just kind of like establishing a workflow. We've really been kind of thinking of it in this way, that you want to choose a platform that's going to organize your content. Sometimes this is called an LMS or learning management system. And so we've kind of identified 2 different platforms that will be good for this. So one of them, which we have talked about in the past, is Google Classroom. Google Classroom is kind of like a gold standard of free LMS that works well. It's really good for older students, especially middle schoolers, high schoolers, that they've got multiple classes, so they can be signed up, or they can be students in multiple classrooms. So it's really good for that. It also works well for older elementary students, and I've even used it. I was a 2nd grade teacher and used it successfully with 2nd graders. It's also got really seamless integration with the G Suite apps, including Google Docs, Google Forms, Google Slides. Just works really well, and there's a lot to like about Google Classroom. One thing about Google Classroom, though, is that it's a little bit dry. It's just like kind of, it's mostly just text. So we have been hearing a lot about Seesaw. Seesaw is another kind of platform or learning management system that works really well, especially for younger students. It's more visual. It can be a really just you can do more things with it. You can just you can record messages directly in the app. It's just a little bit more fun to look at. And the other really great thing about Seesaw, there's a lot of pre-built content. There are other teachers who are building things and building lessons, building materials, and those are available within the app. And so Seesaw is a really good option, good alternative to Google Classroom. And we are going to be having another training on Seesaw in particular on Wednesday. So if you're interested in learning more about Seesaw and how to get started with that, make sure that you check out that webinar on Wednesday coming up. Okay. Just want to talk a little bit about exploring resources. Once you've got your platform, then you're going to want to be checking out resources. So check Teacher Central. We've got a distance learning page. You can click on any of these resources here and learn more about them. We are still working on building this, but we're working hard just to provide support, videos, trainings on any of these resources. So make sure that you're checking in with Teacher Central just to find out more about like what is going to be a good fit for you. Another system that we've been setting up is using Teacher Google Classrooms. So Brenda's going to be talking a little bit more about these, but these are teacher created. We're working with staff and teacher leaders to fill in these classrooms, these Google Classrooms, so that for different grade levels and different subject areas, we have materials that you can look at. You can decide if you want to use those, and then you can just pull those into your own Google Classroom. Okay, so those are some things to think about just as far as like how you're going to just work on your workflow. There's actually one more thing that I want to talk about now that I'm thinking about it. For adding content, make sure that you're connecting and collaborating with others. This is a really great time for us to be collaborating with others, so that those Teacher Google Classroom are really good option for that. But if you are also becoming a co-teacher with other teachers in your whatever platform you're using, make sure that you're sharing content. This is a really good time for you to work with your teams, your grade level teams, and to share resources, share content. And another thing is to consider cycling through different platforms so that you can keep things fresh for your students. So there are a lot of resources that are available right now, right? We've been getting all kinds of emails, just like, oh, this is free, or these are COVID-19 resources that you can use. So maybe just check out a couple and choose a couple that you want to use, that you're ready to use. Sometimes what happens with online learning or these platforms is that students, they tend to get like a little bit tired of them. So something that you can consider doing is maybe in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, you can introduce something new. Maybe you've got a couple of just standbys with Google Docs or whatever that are really working for you well, but consider changing it up a little bit. Okay, so I do want to talk just a little bit about Google Classroom, and I'm going to share my Google Classroom with you, or a couple of my Google Classrooms. Just give me just a second and I'll get that set up. Okay, so Google Classroom. So we have gone over Google Classroom in a previous training, but I just want to talk to you about like different ways that you can set things up. So one option is just to have different topics or subject areas that you could use. You could also just create a weekly or daily schedule for a week. That's another option. So just like looking through like how you actually create different kinds of posts, just quickly, we've been over this before in a previous training, but just looking at that, you do have assignments where you can set up assignments and you can pull in different things that you have created. You can you can pull in your different Google Docs. You can pull in different slideshows. So a lot of different options that you can use as far as that. And you can also use this, if you do have multiple classes, you can choose different classes. Maybe you're a co-teacher with someone else. If you're sharing resources, if you're sharing classrooms, you can just pull in different posts. You can also use this on the right. You can choose which students you are sharing with. So that's really good for differentiation. So think about that. Another type of post that you can use a question. So this is something that you can ask a question to students. You can have actually a lot that's in there in your instructions. You can also add links. You can also, on the fly, you can create a Google Doc that would help you with that. This kind of applies to any kind of those posts. And then you also have the option for any of these posts, like we talked about, to add that to any of your classrooms and to choose any of your students. You can choose in the settings of your question whether students can reply to each other. So you can kind of start a conversation about something, and you can also let students edit their own answers. And then another type of post, which is really useful, it's just adding any kind of material. So this could be a YouTube video. This could be any kind of link that you've got. You can find YouTube videos, or if you've got the URL for any of the YouTube videos, that's a really good option if you can find good YouTube videos to use for your class. Okay, so I just want to end it there with just a discussion of Google Classroom. If you do have questions about Google Classroom or anything, you can always reach out to the team. But I did want to pass it over to Sam, who's going to talk a little bit about Seesaw. And Seesaw, like we said, is an alternative to Google Classroom for organizing your content.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just typing answers to some questions, and I'll try to make sure that I include those answers right now. So Seesaw is basically free. There's a free and a paid version. I'm going to screen share now with you. And the difference between the free and paid version, I think, is actually pretty minimal. Sorry, here's me answering questions. You can see that, maybe, if my internet also is unstable, is here in this image. So it's really like not a huge difference. The number of activities you can create in the free version is 100, and it's 500 in the paid version. there's a couple of other things, but that's the really big one. Seesaw is recommended for grades pre-K to 12, which is a huge range. But I also think that it's really important to name that I think it's great for students with IEPs. I think it's great for English language learners or LTELs, because one of the really big differences between Seesaw and Google Classroom is how students interact with assignments. So students respond to assignments. They can respond with a photo. They can respond with a drawing. They can respond with a video. They can respond with an audio recording of their voice. They can respond with like a typewritten note, which is what's up on my screen right now. Or they can respond with a link. So all of those kind of different functionalities are a little bit more, I think they're a little more interactive than Google Classroom. The other major difference between Seesaw and Google Classroom is the way that families interact with it. In Google Classroom, families can sign up for like a weekly summary, which is sort of like more of a grade report of like what has been assigned, what has their student done, what grades did they get, what's missing. In Seesaw, families can see their student's journal, and the journal is like, it functions like a portfolio of the student's work in the class. And so families can only see their own students' portfolios. They can't see any other students' work, but they can comment, they can leave voice recordings, or like typewritten comments of, you know, encouragement or praise or whatever they want to do. Seesaw also has a pre-created content library, so that's here in activities. That's another big difference between Google Classroom. So this is, you can use activities that other teachers created and assign those to your class. So I'm going to click on plus right here, and I'm going to click assign activity. And what it does is it takes you to this activity library when you click on the community tab, and you can search for content by grade or subject area, and it's pretty easy to do. You can also search by keyword, but if I said second grade and I said English language arts, then I get a whole bunch of assignments here that I could use, and you can see some of them I've favorited, and you can save those for later to assign later for your class, or as you're looking through kind of thinking about what you want to do. One of the other differences, and I think it's a minimal difference between the free and paid version of Seesaw, is when you save something with a heart, you can save it to a collection. And in the free version, you can only create 2 collections. So you can see in my library of things that I've saved, I have a whole bunch of saved assignments, but I only have 2 collections. So all of my other assignments are just up here, and that's okay. When you are using pre-created content through Seesaw, it's editable. So you can change the assignment that somebody else created to better fit your class. But you can also create your own new activities. So I'm here in my activities library, and I can just click create new activity. And to do that, you can upload, you know, like a regular Google Doc or an image or a video that you want students to interact with, or a file from your computer. And one of the things that's really cool about Seesaw that I really like is you can record the voice instructions. So in a lot of these pre-created activities, and in activities you might create yourself, teachers record themselves reading the directions out loud to their students. And I think that's really helpful and a great opportunity to be helpful. I saw in the question somebody asked about apps. Seesaw has an app for families that has an Android and an iOS version, and it's called Seesaw Family, I believe. And they have an app for students and for teachers to access the class, which is called Seesaw Class. Yeah, I think that's all of my main points about Seesaw.
Great, thank you, Sam. Brenda, did you want to take over and talk a little bit more about the teacher Google Classrooms?
Yeah, so one thing that our central academics team started doing the week before spring break is trying to assemble more resources for teachers. I want to be really clear that these are resources. These are not mandates or directives. We know right now, I was a teacher for 12 years. I never had to do distance learning as a classroom teacher. I feel a little bit behind the curve. I set up my first Google Classroom last week. And I think we're in a space where a lot of us are learners, and we recognize that. We're not a district or I don't think any district around the world right now is going from no distance learning to full implementation overnight. This is something that's going to take time and is going to require learning both for teachers and for students. So we know that the people right now who know the most are the teachers out in the field who have been experimenting with this for a couple weeks. And what we've done is pulled together teachers. It looks different at different grade levels. At some spans, we have teacher leaders themselves who are curating resources. At other grade spans, we have some central staff who are working closely with teachers and coaches based at sites that they're in communication with. And we're cultivating resources and we're sharing them through Google Classrooms. And the reason that we're using Google Classrooms is this gives teachers in OUSD a chance to be a learner. So you'll get to participate as a student in Google Classroom and see what it's like and have information shared with you. And if you are then inspired and choose to use that for your students, that's great. That's not an expectation, but that's something that you can do. Another thing that I want to mention is that Google Classroom as part of the G Suite is free to all OUSD teachers. And also all the things that use the OUSD Google login, and Kel, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I know definitely anything that students log in through Clever, what Clever does is they provide privacy protection. So any like third party technology that we contract with, student identity is obscured through Clever. So I know there's a lot of questions right now around Zoom. We're exploring those. You're adults, so we're taking our chances. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to share my screen to show you these Google Classrooms so you can see what it looks. And I'm learning too, so if I make a mistake, bear with me. I learned to do this last week. Okay, can you see my screen? I think so.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So anywhere, your email or your calendar where you have this little box here, you can get to your Google Classroom. And I've joined a bunch of them because I'm pretty excited. So I'll show you what they look like. For example, in secondary math, you'll see a message from Courtney and some core resources. And these are going to be updated in real time. So if you join this class, then you'll see all the updates. If you've never joined a class before, then you'll want to start at Teacher Central. Let's see if I find it. I had it up a minute ago. Here we go. Teacher Central, the home page. You'll see that there's a whole list of all the Google Classrooms that are set up right now. Oh, that's the wrong link. Here. So right now we have Google Classroom set up for every elementary grade. It's actually TK and K together, and then first through fifth. In middle school, we have content-specific sessions, science, math, ELA, computer science, history, social science, newcomer, ELD. We have those same offerings in high school. We're working on setting up additional Google Classrooms for things like arts, visual and performing arts, also for our colleagues in special education. Resource teachers will probably want to access a lot of the general ed resources, but we're working on setting up new ones as well. So this is sort of your landing page to see all of this information. And this is a work in progress. So all of the pages have built-in places to give feedback that will go specifically to the curator of those pages, who may very well be classroom teachers who have taken on some special responsibilities during this time. So please give feedback. And this is just a way for us to share. And when we think about communication and building community, so far we've talked a lot about reaching out to connect with students. We also want to provide spaces for teachers to interact with each other. So this is a way for teachers to see what other teachers who teach their same content at other schools are doing. Many of them are also going to be hosting some some virtual PLCs that are completely optional, but if you want to actually jump on a Zoom call and see other kindergarten teachers or other middle school history teachers or other 5th grade teachers face to face, that'll be a chance to do that. And that's all I have to say about the Google Classrooms.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Brenda. So one thing that we are going to get into the questions and answers. Thank you, Lizzie. I know you've been working feverishly to compile all of those, and our panelists are taking a look at those and also answering as we speak. One thing that I did want to mention now is that we are setting up office hours so that if you have specific questions, then we're going to have office hours set up so that you can sign up for an appointment if you need some personal help. And so we're going to be posting that on Teacher Central. Make sure that you are checking back with Teacher Central. We're trying to direct like all of the traffic there. We're trying to get all of our resources posted there. We'll have upcoming trainings posted there that you can find the codes for the teacher Google Classrooms there. You can find just resources and information, updates, and we're making updates to Teacher Central every day. So it'll be fresh for you and you can find what you need. And the other thing is that we need to know, we need to hear from you about how we can support you. If you have input about what kind of trainings you would like, or if you feel like you need a more in-depth training on a particular subject, we want to hear from you. We want to know that so that we can do our planning. So we do have a form that's available. I don't have that right in front of me, but maybe we can post that. If we can put that in the chat. I don't know, Lizzie, if you've got that I think that might be up at the top of that question and answer document. So if you don't mind posting that in the chat. So make sure that you click on that. We do want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and let's move to the question and answer. I saw that Lizzie did put that form in there. So go ahead and click on that. Make sure that you save that. We'll put that in Teacher Central also. It might already be there, but I want to make sure that that we do have that. So I'll make sure that we've got that up there. But let's go ahead and move to our question and answer session. How are we doing this, Lizzie? What's the flow going to be, do you think?
Well, we've had a lot of questions. So panelists, feel free if you feel like there are highlights. Sorry, I've just been trying to keep up with pasting them in, so they're somewhat organized. But I can start off with one that seemed to be a bit of a theme, and that was about security on Zoom. There were some questions about is Zoom safe and secure to use with our students? So I would invite any of the panelists to address that.
Yeah, I would like to talk about that. So there are definitely concerns about Zoom. I've been reading about that as well. We've heard that New York City schools, they shut down Zoom. So it's definitely an issue that we've been tracking and we're aware of. Do want to point out that other platforms, including Google Hangout Meets, they do have a lot of the same vulnerabilities, but there are some steps that you can take when you are using Zoom to prevent people from hacking in, from doing Zoom bombing. So actually right now I've got my 16-year-old daughter is next to me, and she's volunteered. She's working on a document right now to make sure that we've got all the documentation about that. And so we're going to be posting that later today on Teacher Central. There's going to be a Zoom information page that includes tips about how to make sure that you're preventing anyone from hacking in and making sure that it's as secure as possible.
That's great. There were also just a few questions about this webinar and the content of this webinar, as well as past webinars. So can you just name how can teachers find this content after the webinar is over?
Yes, we are posting. So we've had 2 webinars so far, and those are on Teacher Central. They're listed on Teacher Central, and it takes just a little bit of time to get them posted and uploaded. But we will make sure that every evening that we're posting the recorded version of the webinars on Teacher Central.
Thank you. And then there are also some questions about the MOU. Some teachers have not received it yet, and they're wondering where can they find it and how can they vote on it?
So if you did not receive the MOU in your non-OUSD email, 2 things I would recommend. 1, check your junk mail just in case. And then 2, if not, you can go to oaklandea.org, and there should be a link on there, as well as there's a space, or you could email me too, but there's a space on there to contact someone and tell them you're not on the email list, because on Wednesday or Thursday, one of those days, and sometime later this week, is when the actual voting will happen, and you will get an email from Simply Voting, which is how the platform we use for our elections. So oaklandea.org if you do not have it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm also seeing a lot of questions about Google Classroom and how you can add students to a Google Classroom account. Do you need to manually add all your students to the account? And what if you want your principal to be able to see the account too?
Could you talk about that a little bit, Sam?
Yeah, Google Classroom has a class code that you can send to your students to join. So if you have talking points or another way that you've been getting in touch with your students sort of like in bulk, it would be great to send out your class code that way. And then when students go to Google Classroom, they'll go to classroom.google.com and have the option to join a class. You can have your principal join your class as a student if you want them to be able to see it that way, or you can add them as a co-teacher. And I also just want to name the same is true for Seesaw. You can add a co-teacher to Seesaw. You can add your principal as a co-teacher, or if you have another co-teacher in your grade. And Seesaw, I saw a question, I just was pasting in some help content about how you add students, or they give 2 options for student sign up. And one is a class code, and that's what I would personally use because it's exactly the same as Google Classroom, right? They go to Seesaw's website, they click I'm a student, they put the join code, and then they're in your class.
And what about parents?
So I saw a question in the chat about if especially younger students could use a parent email to log into Google Classroom. I believe OUSD's settings prevent non-OUSD emails from joining our Google Classrooms. So I actually think that would not work. With Google Classroom, if you want parents just like to be aware and to be involved on I believe it's the people page or students in the settings, you can click invite guardian next to the student's name on your roster, and then you'll put in the email address of each parent. For Seesaw, it's sort of similar. There's the family app, and they can create an account that way. You can enable it in the settings. And somebody asked for more information about Seesaw, and I just wanted to name that on Wednesday. We'll spend a lot more time talking about it in the Seesaw/Talking Points webinar.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. There are also some questions about getting access to Clever and the badges that are available through Clever. What should you do if you can't log into Clever?
Those are questions, inquiries that should be directed to me, so you should email me at kelleth.chen@ousd.org.
Cool. I'm also seeing a lot of questions just about distance learning and our challenges that we're facing with this approach to teaching. So I'm wondering, can anybody give an update on how tech distribution is going? And then for students that still don't have access to tech, just some key talking points for how we're trying to approach supporting them.
So we're still working on distribution. We really we were finalizing a plan the week before spring break, and with people out during spring break, we weren't really able to implement the plan. So we're continuing with that. it is going to take some time. There are some schools that are kind of ahead of the game, and they started doing that a long time ago. And then there are some schools that they need some more support and need some more time. But we do have, we're definitely keeping on top of that. We've got Kylie Nevis is the former coordinator of instructional technology, and she has returned to the district for the time being, and she is helping coordinate that effort. So there's not only device distribution, but internet access is a big issue. And so we're compiling all of the different options for families to make sure that they can get connected. So it's an ongoing process, but we're working on it every day.
Thank you. A couple questions that maybe might go to Chaz and might be MOU related. There's some nervousness around potentially having to record and post lessons and possibly even record live. Is this something that teachers are going to be expected to do?
No. So none of our lessons or anything that we're doing, meetings, will be recorded. Unless, of course, I know we said unless the teacher chooses to do so, because there are some folks who are working on different things educationally and they want to use their lessons to submit, then they would be able to do that. But it specifically says that they will not be recorded.
Great, thank you. And then I'm also seeing some questions about grading. So, and especially if there are students who either aren't able to or who are choosing not to participate in distance learning offerings, how are we supposed to approach grading them?
Yeah, that's what took us so long. Ultimately, we have to come from a kind of pass, no pass. It can't just be a complete held harmless, which is what we were fighting for. That's to say that a student's grade wouldn't be impacted at all. However, we did agree that we came up with all the mitigating factors, including job loss of household family member, foster youth, language, not having access to tech. There are also paper. Central office is working on creating packets in some situations for like elementary. So for some reason that weren't accessible, different things like that. There are a whole list of them. They're listed in the MOU that they would not be the reason that a student did not receive a pass. So it comes down to wanting the message to be, we want you to continue engaging in learning to the students and the community, and really being realistic that we know some students won't be able to, and having kind of a safety net for them so that they won't be negatively impacted. And that's for us as educators to really hold in our heart that I know sometimes when we grade, we're all over the place. We are not calibrated, but really keeping in mind that never mind what the student was doing prior, if they were being successful or not during this period of time. And this is also where wellness checks are really important, and they're not written into the MOU, but they are on the OEA website, and they have a wealth of resources connected. So if you check in with families just to see how are you doing, and they tell you that they need baby formula, for one example, I had a teacher tell me, and the mom wasn't able to procure any, and so the teacher actually connected the mom and she was able to get formula. So these do things like build relationships, but also help you have a better understanding of who you're serving. So with that, I encourage, if you haven't done wellness checks on families, just to kind of check in with them. And because we don't always know what our students are grappling with. So I would say the way that the MOU is written goes into it. And because of the universities, when you're in 12th grade, it couldn't just be a no grading period. So there will be a pass, no pass. But to not pass, there are many steps that a teacher has to take in order for that student not to pass. So I don't have the language in front of me, but that's kind of a synopsis of how grading is addressed.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a couple more questions about Google Classroom here. Is it possible for a teacher to add students manually without them having to join with a class code? And then after that, maybe we can address how can teachers find the class codes to join these Google Classrooms that are getting set up for them?
So that's kind of two different questions, but starting with the question, is it possible to manually add students? Yes, it is, absolutely. In Google Classroom, there's a People tab, and you click on that tab, and that shows you who your students are, or maybe it's a space with empty students, and you click on a plus sign by students, and you can manually add them by adding their email addresses with the S_ first name, last name. And then that second question about the teacher Google Classrooms, Brenda, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. So where to find the codes for Google Classrooms, you'll want to go to Teacher Central. And some people have asked about the website. If you go to OUSD.org and you look at the COVID-19 updates, you should find a link to Teacher Central. You can also just type in Teacher Central at OUSD.org. Is that no? teachercentral.OUSD.org.
It's teachercentral.OUSD.
.OUSD.
Yeah.
It's not an email address. .OUSD.org.
Right.
And you'll see all the codes listed there.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for a couple more. Is that right? Great. I have a question here from a speech therapist who's also serving students with IEPs. What are our teachers supposed to do in order to meet the needs of students with individualized plans? Is there any advice from the district or from the OEA or guidance that we can find in the MOU?
As far as the MOU, I would probably defer to Chaz about that. We are working on that for students with IEPs. We're working on how we can accommodate them. And a week from today, that's actually going to be one of the topics of the Monday webinar. So stay tuned for that. But we are working on resources for students with IEPs. Thank you for the question.
And as for the MOU, I put in the chat that there is a FAQ coming out. We're working on it that kind of addresses some of these things. And it does talk about kind of the expectations for our resource specialists or our special support staff being different in terms of a classroom elementary teacher. The expectation might be that you're at least checking in once a week, whereas that's not feasible for somebody who has a caseload of 47 or 600 like our nurses do. So there's some guidance in there, but look for an FAQ that'll be coming out hopefully by tomorrow.
Yeah, and I saw a question that I'd love to talk about.
Please
It's going to do wild card right here.
Yeah.
So questions about how we can support kids with learning without technology. There's some really innovative stuff happening right now in Oakland. So here's some ideas that I've heard from teachers. When you call the students that you work with, ask them what they're reading about. Have them talk to you about the book that they're reading, and then ask what they're going to read next, and prepare some questions for them that are aligned to something that you've been doing in class. I know some math teachers who've been calling students and giving them math problems orally over the phone, and saying, when I call you the next time, I want you to have answers ready for me. I know some teachers who have asked their students, and these are mostly elementary because that's my background and tends to be who my friends are, but doing science investigations where they have students go outside and record different birds in their neighborhood and their location, and they're trying to see with less people out on the streets, are we seeing more city wildlife? And having the kids collect data every day and then sharing and doing some class data. So there's lots of different things that kids can do at home with their families that doesn't require them to sit in front of a screen. And this is a time to know that wherever you start, where you're starting, whatever you're trying is the right place to be. And over the next couple weeks, we're going to learn a lot from each other. The Google Classrooms are really set up so that teachers can share things that are working for them with other people. But we recognize that there is a huge variety. So I would say wherever you are, to be okay with that. Things in the world might get a lot worse before they get better. And what we want to do is provide a sense of normalcy and community and connection with our kids. And anything we can do to support them with their learning is great. We also know that this is a huge disruption, and we'll support kids in the fall when we come back together. And right now we're all doing the best we can, and that's exactly where we should be.
Thank you, Brenda. Just want to be respectful of everyone's time because we're just about at the end of the hour. Thank you, Lizzie, for doing a great job moderating those questions. I know that we do have more questions that did not get answered. So we do have a transcript of the chat, and so we'll continue to compile all of those questions. And I'm thinking that maybe what we should do is create a special page on Teacher Central called Intro to Distance Learning. We'll post all of the questions with the answers on that page. Remember also, I did mention before that we're going to have office hours set up. Sam and I are going to have office hours, so if you need individual help with something and need 10 or 15 minutes to help you troubleshoot a problem, or you need a little bit of personal help, we can help you with that. Make sure that you're checking Teacher Central for updates. What my understanding, I just saw the MOU just a couple of hours ago, but my understanding is that there are going to be 2 dedicated teacher work days of prep time over the next 2 days. So that means Tuesday and Wednesday. Have I got that right, Chas?
That is correct. We, although the membership has not ratified it yet, we talked to the district and they said that they would go ahead with those 2 days. The reason it's going to take a little longer to ratify is because of what's happening. The system we use said they needed more time. So, but yes, the next 2 days.
Okay, thank you, Chaz. So then just understand that that's the expectation, is that you will have at least that time to prepare yourself, get organized, work on lessons, ask questions. One reason that we had this webinar scheduled and scheduled it the way that we did is so that you can, we wanted really kind of broad planning topics. So really do recommend checking in over the next few days, joining the webinars. If you can't make it, then we are going to be posting everything. So just want to say a big thank you to everyone who joined. All of you, you're amazing. Thanks for being flexible. Thank you for your persistence. I want to also thank the other panelists for joining. Thank you, Chaz, it means a lot to us that you joined us, and I know that was reassuring, just having your presence here today. So just want to say thank you to everyone. And we'll end it there. Make sure that you check back in. If you have other questions that were not answered, check back in on Teacher Central, and we will try to answer everybody's questions. Thanks, everybody.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Sure.
The link to our office hours, if people want to sign up, is going to be on Teacher Central, right?
On Teacher Central, yeah. We'll get that set up this afternoon for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody.